people are now asking for you to be part of this old world that like Gen Z doesn't know. They never lived in that world.
You were in for another great episode. Roxanne and I were so thrilled to chat with Heather Doshay, partner and head of talent at SignalFire. We talked about a ton of scary things, a ton of big things like, should you fire all your middle managers? Why are Gen Z candidates struggling to find work? And what you need to know about the risk of AI-driven fraud and cybersecurity in your recruitment process. Because let me tell you, you would be surprised how close you may have come to hiring a North Korean spy. While I've got you, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Athena, the company that pays for my and Roxanne's salaries. Definitely check us out if you want to learn more about great compliance training, including trainings to help you ward off North Korean spies in your recruitment process. Have your legal team and compliance team check us out. Heather, I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. For anybody who doesn't know, we're chatting with Heather Doshay, partner and head of talent at SignalFire. And Heather and I have known each other for a little while because we're part of this community in the tech world called People Tech Partners. And Heather always has the best contributions. You're always very active on it. I learned a ton from you. And I recently started paying closer attention to some of your LinkedIn posts. And you talked a lot about the state of talent report from SignalFire. And so I just want to dive super deep into it. So Heather, thank you so much. Really excited to dig in.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm so excited to be here, and it's good to see you, Roxanne, as well. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. All right, so Heather, before we kick it off, I have a surprise question for you. I want to see what your take is, because Roxanne, for anyone who doesn't know, has a habit of just dropping bombs on me. For the record, Roxanne, if it makes you feel any better, I think this is very common of CEOs where it's like,
totally.
I just listen,
strong opinions
right?
loosely held, and let's just try something.
Just listen to this podcast. We should do this now. I mean, is it not accurate?
It's 100%. I say that like 5 times a day.
Yes, maybe more. So Heather, I decided, Roxanne sent me one and I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to drop this a bomb on the podcast guest and see how the podcast guest reacts before I react. So Heather, thank you so much for taking one for the team. Mm-hmm. All right. So there's a CEO at Bayer. His name is Bill Anderson. And he claims that we need to just start removing middle managers. And in fact, he's actually already done it at his company. And he now has managers managing teams of 30, 50, up to 97 direct reports. So 60 seconds or less. Heather, what's your argument for or against? Should we do it? Should we fire all of our middle managers right now? All of us?
Okay, I love this question because I think it came up similar concept maybe a couple months ago. Jensen Wang from NVIDIA had I have 55 direct reports and I don't do one-on-ones and I just tell everyone everything at the same time. And I was like, oh, like I'm going to have to deal with this. So in my role, I work with a lot of founders of very early stage companies where they don't even have probably middle management yet because they're like 10 people. And what ends up happening is they hear a thing that some famous CEO says that maybe works for them and maybe doesn't actually work for them, but it's a great media headline. And then everyone thinks I need to do that too, so I can be as successful as fill in the blank of the company. It is wrong. So I would say do not do it. Do I think that middle managers are the reason for a lot of the miscommunications that happen at companies and a lot of the flopped initiatives? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it's the fault of the middle managers. That means it's the fault of like the entire communication chain. And they're just the middle branch in the middle of it. So I would say no, do not jump to any trends. And if you're going to say this is something interesting, maybe we should like lean into it. What does like your 2% toe in the water look like so you can experiment safely with the concept? So like looking at span of control of your team and saying, hey, right now, managers have on average 5 direct reports. Can we move the needle to 7? How can we enable managers to be more effective if we go to 7, if we go to 10 or whatever else, rather than saying, I'm just going to drop this thing? Because guess what? It's going to be really hard when you have to go pick up all the pieces. So don't do it.
So I feel like what I'm hearing is right problem, possibly wrong solution. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to do this, do it in a confined space so that there's minimal damage. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Like a grand experiment. Like a lot of the ideas, I agree, like so many ideas are good in theory.
Yeah.
And then in practice, they completely fall apart because the context is wrong and there's missing nuance to the situation that exists for one that's true that is not true for you. And so you have to understand the nuance and the context before you're making like one-way door decisions.
Fascinating. Roxanne, take as a CEO.
Always have takes as well. Well, one, I like this because I think that like, and I'm curious if this resonates, Heather, but the personality type to start a company, you're like a little weird. Like I would not say I'm like the most, like go with the flow human. I don't think anyone would describe me as like chill and go with the flow. And so I think what happens is like CEOs, founders, like listen to something, they hear an idea and they want to implement it immediately because they have this like bias to action because like that's how you start a company. And so it can be really frustrating if I'm Roxanne and Melanie's Melanie. And I'm like, Melanie, I want to fire all of our middle managers. I mean, I have many flaws. I do not like flippantly fire, but as an example. And I see Melanie just kind of like what it feels like to me would be like hemming and hawing. That can be really frustrating as a CEO because you're like, you're not doing anything. And so I like your kind of more like middle ground of like, let's scope an experiment and execute an experiment. Also because, and I'm like super guilty of this, I think CEOs have a version of like ADD typically, and sometimes we're like not that serious about an idea and we like get excited about it and we want to talk about it. But then if you're like, Roxanne, is this one of the 5 things you want me to prioritize this quarter? I'm sort of like, no. And so it like gives it air to be like, I want to know that you heard me, that you think I'm not like, that you're not just like blowing me off, but that you're also providing a solution that won't like utterly cause chaos in the company. Cause I think you're right that like also as a CEO, I want my company to be successful. I'm not interested in just like chaos monkeying for the sake of chaos. So in general, I like the call it the like more middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know every founder's intention is good. There's a reason why they have the thing that they want, that they heard. There's a problem they're trying to solve. And the thing that I'm trying to get better at is rather than have the reaction I had with you all, because I was just like in my hot seat moment, if I was actually in like the people leader seat and the CEO saying this to me, I would try to like hold on for a second, like pause, think, okay, let's lead with curiosity. Let's figure out what is the reason behind the thing. So tell me more about this. Like, what excites you about this? Where did you hear about this? Like, be on the same side of the table and really understand, and then hear what the true solve is. It's kind of like the product manager. If you tell them what features you want, they're gonna be like, whoa, 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 tell me what problem you're solving. I will solve that problem in the best way the product can. So how can you help them solve like the middle management problem in a way that isn't actually just cutting the entire leveling?
With that said, let's jump in. Heather, I read through SignalFire's State of Report, and there were many fascinating things that came up. In particular, no surprise about AI. And so I have a question for you. Roxanne's gonna roll her eyes because I've been on this kick lately, where I'm trying so deeply to understand Gen Z. The reason why is because I usually pride myself in being like I lean towards curiosity. I genuinely like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to see this as a problem to solve. And I am finding that I'm really struggling in this area. I'm not leading with curiosity. I'm getting defensive. That is not a good thing, in my opinion. So I have a question for you because something perked my ear. I don't know what the right saying is.
Melanie, you were like, did you have like 5 cups of coffee? Like, I'm loving it, but you're like 3 doses of Melanie right now.
Coffee
She's
like
just
really?
Yeah.
You know, people have given me that feedback numerous times. Talk slower. I don't know how, Roxanne. I don't know how.
To be
We
really
work on
fair, I
that.
get the same feedback, and people tell me I'm like listening to 1.5 speed, but just regular. And actually, at our company holiday party, someone's wife came up to their husband and like said, "Wait, is that the girl who, when I heard you, she had walked into him on a Zoom call with me and said, 'Why are you listening to that recording on 1.5?'" It's like, "Shh, I'm in a meeting with her. She's talking right now." And it was just me, like being me. So, Melanie, anyone who's listening to this will just have to like turn it down to 0.5 and we can just have a regular conversation.
My question, my question is, according to the SignalFire State of Talent Report, they said that new grads now account for just 7% of hires. Which I didn't have a reference point at the time to know if that's good or bad. Apparently, it's down 25% from 2023. Yeah, and over 50% from pre-pandemic, so pre-2019. And so my question to you, before I get up on my high horse and start making stuff up, is from your perspective, what's going on? Is it really all AI, or are employers really that reluctant to work with Gen Z employees?
It's a really funny, it's like a false dichotomy, but you see every headline being in one of those two directions. There's a different answer that I would say. It's like option C, and then those two things do uh, contribute to the overall dynamic. So really what it is the economy. So what's happening is we all know that in 2021, if you look at people who have now, say, 4 years of experience post college, like working in the workforce, they came into an economy where everybody was hiring rampantly. Great resignation, everyone's hiring. If you graduated in 2021, you probably got a job right out of school. Things were great. And then in 2022, summer, 1 year later, peak of layoff season, right? Everything started going down, or the beginning of layoff season, everything started going downward and it kind of stayed forward. And so what happened is companies contracted. They got smaller, they were hiring less, they were being more critical, and way more people were in the market because everybody probably knew someone who was laid off if they weren't laid off themselves, like very deeply, or had seen it at their company. And so as a result, you have all these experienced workers in the workforce who are going for the same jobs as everyone else, some taking a year, 2 years to find something, and saying, you know what, I'm willing to take an entry level job because I need work. And so what ended up happening is companies have gotten smaller. So if you look at Carta data, you'll see they're continuing to, it's like a Series A startup is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. People are hiring later and later and later because fundraising is harder. And so companies are trying to watch their burn, watch their runway, and they're just hiring smaller teams, seeing if they can do more with less, that concept. And perfect storm. Also, what's happening at the same time is AI is this great beacon of hope of like things that can happen. And I do believe that it is. But I also believe that it is not there yet. So a lot of the aspirational things that we think it can do, it's not currently fully able to do, especially connecting between workflows and things. And so companies are trying to figure out, can I use AI to augment my team as opposed to just hiring people in those seats? So it's both a mix of like pure economic interest, and it's really runway and burn management interest. And then what's happening on top of that is AI can fill in the gaps in some of these places so that it can see that through. In terms of people not wanting to work with Gen Z, I do hear that a lot, like prospectively in the surveys, like, oh, I'd rather hire AI than work with Gen Z, or Gen Z is difficult, or they're too like expecting too much of the employer and that's not realistic in this economy, or whatever those things are. But I don't think that's the reason they're not getting hired. I think it's that when you're a recruiting team looking at two sets of resumes, and one is a very experienced hire who's willing to do whatever the job is and can hit the ground running because they've done it before, and the other is a new grad that you're going to have to invest in and work with and train up, they're going to hire the experienced person. Like that's really what's happening.
I feel like what I'm hearing has nothing to do with Gen Z specifically, in your opinion. It's more just about the experience level, and that happens to be Gen Z right now in their stage of career. It could have been a millennials if this was happening a few years
Could have been you,
earlier.
Melanie.
Could have been me.
And it
Could
did
have been
have,
me.
I mean, I graduated college in 2006 and I entered the workforce, and in 2007 because I got a master's degree right after. And so I took a first job. It was fine. 2007, everything was easy. I wanted to change jobs and move back to California I was living in Louisiana in 2009. Just like really ignorant young person going like, this should be fun. Like I'm experienced now. I got 2 years of work. And I went out and tried to find jobs, and it was so hard to job search in the middle of a recession. And I remember trying to like, I've heard that women don't negotiate. I'm going to negotiate my salary. I'm going to try. And my manager like laughed at me. They're like, we're in like furloughs right now. Like there's no budget for you to negotiate. Like I can't get you, I have to go. I've already made an exception to get this job. And so I changed jobs in that time. And I think back, like we were in that position if you were kind of around my graduating class. We just didn't have AI to also blame. It was purely economic. Now you have this other scapegoat, which I think is certainly like a companion theme, but it's not the only reason.
And in the SignalFire report as well, it flagged that many employers did respond, I'm reluctant to hire Gen Z, and I'd rather hire AI if I could, not just because AI is cheaper, but also because of X, Y, and Z issues about Gen Z. I hear from your perspective that, okay, that's a factor, but that's not the underlying primary reason. My question to you is, do you think that impacts anything at all? Or is it just some grumbling that isn't really having any actual impact?
I think it could actually impact things a little bit, especially once hired. I'm curious what you all think. And Melanie, especially you with your feelings on Gen Z, you have strong feelings and defensive feelings. Are you pro Gen Z or like anti Gen Z? I have to stop there first before I answer this because I feel like I could offend.
It's also confusing because she looks like she's Gen Z.
She does. It's We're not the same age, but maybe we are. I don't know.
Honestly, she's like vegan and got like 6,000 cats back there. It's just like it reads as like, are you
I'm guessing you
messing
live
with
in
me?
Brooklyn of all places in New York. Is
All
Did you hear
for
that,
the
Melanie?
for the record, I am 34.
okay, yeah.
I am far into, I'm not even on the fence. I am millennial, deep millennial. But I guess I'll say thanks. Thanks for
Okay.
confusing me
That's
with
young
Gen
to me.
Z.
That's like baby millennial to me because I'm a geriatric as
Oh,
well. So yes.
okay, that's fair. Maybe I'm a baby millennial. I wouldn't say I'm pro or against. I think what I find to be my biggest challenge with Gen Z is truly it comes down to communication style. And before I say that, I want to say that the one place where I do have empathy happily is I think that people are detrimentally hyping up Gen Z and encouraging them to communicate in these really divisive ways. I want to be clear, it's not that I disagree with the ethos of Gen Z, it's that I think. And again, I don't put this fully on Gen Z. I think that there is social media, there's external pressure pushing and incentivizing Gen Z to do it in these really divisive ways that sort of make it it's us against them. The employer
Yeah.
is the bad guy, and you should approach that conversation like they're beneath you and the villain and already out to get you. And I actually think it's detrimental
Oh yeah.
because it makes the person less likely to want to help you. That those are my thoughts on Gen Z.
Have seen anecdotally conversations that like completely illustrate this fact. And it's wild when the company is doing something nice by a person, but it's not enough. And therefore
Mm.
it's bad. Like if you can't meet my total requirement, then you are missing the entire mark. And I think that kind of extremism is very dangerous in general. And I think what it comes down to is less around like what generation are you from and more on like how effective are you at influence skills and how did you learn to influence in the first place?
What do you think is the solution?
Yeah. I I don't know if it's a wake up call. I don't know if I have the solution in this moment, but like I'm not just seeing it with Gen Z. I'm seeing it a lot of places
Yeah.
where um like everything to me is I see everything in power lens. I don't know if that makes sense, but like who has the power in this moment? Where is the power lying in the room? Like what's your role based on that? And then how do you move through the world based on that to like be the most effective you can be? And it's not just Gen Z, it's like a lot of clusters of groups that have had fluctuating power and watching how that happens. And maybe this is getting too dark and too serious real fast, but Gen Z is one of those groups. They went to college. If you think about the oldest Gen Z today is like 28 years old. And so they went to college, if not in a pandemic, like just as it was kicking off. The oldest Gen Z just squarely missed college. Like they entered a workforce, first job, never got acculturated. Like they never had a workplace experience that was in a normal state, like the new normal thing that we talked about for so many years. That's all they knew. And so they don't have an understanding of like how the world works and gets done. And I see a lot of powerful CEOs today reclaiming what they believe is their own kind of power in a situation because they can, because jobs are fewer and goals are higher and all these things are happening. And they're asking for an old way of work, like return to office or whatever else it might be. And those people are now asking for you to be part of this old world that like Gen Z doesn't know. They never lived in that world. And so imagine like entering a foreign country that you're not privy to and trying to follow all the etiquette and all the rules and doing it right. You're probably going to screw up a lot. Like I remember, I think I said I did like a hi, and I think in Greece it was, and that means like F you. And I didn't know that. I was just saying hi. And so like think about how many of those miscommunications and firings are happening across companies because of generational lines and unknown expectations.
Another thing that really stood out to me in the report was this question around cybersecurity and the increased risk of fraud and privacy risk with AI. I and Roxanne are particularly interested in this because, of course, we have cybersecurity training, so we think about this quite a bit. I'm curious to know, from your perspective, how serious this risk is, or is it something that people are just blowing out of proportion? Is it just fear mongering to say, hey, people are being infiltrated by spies in North Korea and every candidate is providing fraudulent documentation around their employment history? What's your take,
Yeah.
Heather?
It's absolutely a risk. And I think I've seen it firsthand now. I have a portfolio company who was a part of the North Korean scam. We caught it before they got through to it. I got wind of that article after I helped them solve it that day. And so it was wild to see it play out. So I would say, um, like with many things, there's like high risk, like less likely to happen. So I don't think it's likely that you're going to have a North Korean spy threat happen to your company in your hiring process. However, if it
Do we
does
think Melanie is a North Korean spy? Like, I'm playing this back now.
yeah.
Is this real or is this deep
Yeah.
fake?
It'd be a
Well,
deep fake.
well, and that's the thing. It's like it's one thing to say, I think there's like a spectrum of stuff. So like I don't think it's a bad thing if a candidate uses AI to do better on their work sample exercise and their interview process. Like, yeah, use the tools at your disposal. Like, what engineer isn't looking up code before they're like doing the work in the real job? So if you were Google or YouTube or Redditing or looking at whatever you go to like find your like cheats on certain things, it's a calculator. Like it's anything else that you use to aid in you're getting the work done. And if you want to use it to help you, I'm all for it because the key is, can you edit? Can you curate? Do you know what good looks like when it comes out? Like, can you stop a hallucination? Like you're the curator and editor. However, on the other end of the spectrum is the North Korean scandal. And I don't know if you heard the situation with Clary. And they had hired, apparently they didn't know this, but some fake recruiter had hired 12 people to their company who tried to show up on the first day and there was no job for them. Clary was not involved. And why it's so scary is you're like, why would someone want to do that? And it's they're preying on the individual's personal W-2s information as well as the company intel. But like what I saw happen was there's a candidate who passed all the technical screens at this portfolio company of ours. Like he did great on them. I didn't even know about him until they came through and said, hey, Heather, we'd love some compensation advice from you. This candidate is asking for 140K, but our band says 160 to 200 is a staff level, like engineer. And like he's based in like rural Utah, so maybe that's why the comp is low. But like I was like, oh, like
So the candidate was like under negotiated.
yeah,
Like,
and this is a 10-person comp. They don't have a comp strategy yet. Like they're looking
sure,
at
yeah.
one at a time, and they haven't been deviating from like San Francisco basically. And so I was like, okay, well, like let me see the candidate's profile. Let me understand like why their ask is. And this is somebody who claimed to work at like tier one type growth stage startups prior. And I was like, this person was not earning that before. Like, there's no way on this profile. And then there were more strange flags. Like, it looked like they used LinkedIn Easy Apply to get their staff engineering jobs. Like, I don't know, like many engineers at these companies who are like applying through Easy Apply, like something is off. And so I just said, hey, there's some weird flags. Did you see this candidate in real life? Did you talk to them? Did you do a background check? They passed a checker background check. They
No.
did a phone screen, they did a video screen, but they had to call in separately because they said they had bad reception where they were, so they phoned in but then had a face on. So there were flags, and they individually weren't enough to be a thing. And then but combining it all together with my going like, oh, sound the alarms, like do a background check, they basically said like, let's look into it deeper. So then they started peeling apart things like looking at the age of the LinkedIn. And this is my security training right now for their look at the age of the LinkedIn profile. If you click into a profile, you can see more about them. You can see when they created their account. It's actually kind of cool to see how early some people joined. But it was 6 months ago. But they were showing LinkedIn Easy Apply from like before 6 months ago. And so something was just really amiss. Like I don't know how it happened. I don't know what they did. But they stopped. They didn't make the hire. And it was through a recruiting agency too. A recruiting agency that was legitimate had got this candidate, put them through. So I think like recruiting agencies need to be aware, recruiting teams need to be aware. Like there are many checks that happen before you actually make a hire with someone. And that's by design. And it's more important than ever. And it's not just that, it's customers and sales. Like people are getting into products and they're stealing IP. And so anyway, this is a long answer, but I think it's important to know.
No, it's like, because I feel like it's not sloppy. Like, I feel like the story I thought I was going to hear is kind of like, hey, it was like, whatever, 4 dudes and they were just trying to like get a contractor and they like, found someone on Craigslist. It's like, this is a like
Yeah,
checker and,
super advanced.
recruiter. And I
Mhm.
feel like what's making me think is like, Melanie, I feel like we've had a couple instances, like usually our biggest like LinkedIn kerfuffles and stuff are kind of around like candidate versus company kind of things. Because like to what we were saying, there's people who've been on the job market for a long time. And I feel like there's a lot of frustration, like, why do you make candidates jump through so many hoops and all this? But on the company side, I mean, we haven't had, knock on wood, anything like that, but you definitely get your like, you're lying. You are not telling the truth. And like this is demonstrable. Like and so
Mhm.
yeah, it makes
We
you a little guarded.
we've had a couple actually, Roxanne. That was
This is always I knew if you tell me, Melanie, that we've had a North Korean spy that has been working for us, I quit it
Are
on
they
this
doing good
podcast.
work? I'm just kidding.
I do
Yeah,
not believe we
yeah, that was actually my question when
but
someone flagged the
maybe it's
article. I was
worth
like, were
it.
they good?
It's
Like,
fine,
yeah.
come
Oh Jesus!
come
All
to
right,
our come
Melanie,
to
give
work
me
at
my
Athena.
last. Let's
Uh,
close it out with
yes,
what
but
shit
don't
show's going
worry
on.
because we have actions in place already and we caught them, which is why I didn't make a big deal about it. But we did notice there were a couple. So there was one candidate who made it all the way to end stage and had never turned on their camera, and I was like, absolutely not, absolutely not. But here's what's
Yeah.
tricky about something like that, is that one, I think we're coming, I think this is shifting, but I think we're coming off a few years of really being pro, rightly so, inclusivity, equitability, like being very
Any reason
careful.
you might have for wanting this thing, I can't ask you about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what if they're nursing? What if they, don't have good Wi Fi? What if their background is X, Y, and Z? So it's rude and exclusive to require that somebody turn on their camera, right? And so, and you don't know for a fact that they're not who they say they are. So, how do you tell the person, hey, I'm not going to hire you, not because I know for a fact, but because I'm suspicious and confused, right? Like, that's where it starts to get tricky for us. We don't give an explanation and we don't dig deep. We're just like, oh, you didn't do the things. We'll ask, like, can you turn on your camera? If you don't, we just have an internal policy, which don't worry, Roxanne, we've communicated to our hiring managers. We're actually putting a little
You
training
communicated to
together.
everyone but the CEO. I got it.
Well, oh, geez. We'll have to touch base on that.
No, this
We'll
is
have to
this
touch base
this
on
is the
that.
type of company that I want to work at. I don't
Yeah.
need to know. Like
I
I think that's
suppose,
actually a perfect
yeah.
example of I don't think I needed to know.
You know what? I think I agree with you because where I paused for a second and was like, geez, did I mess up? Is that we made sure it was communicated to anyone who was actively participating in an interview process. And so if you didn't hear about it, for me, that means, I hope that means you were not actively
I think
interviewing.
this would be an example. It might sound like we're fighting. I don't think we're fighting. Because I
Yeah.
think it's like I love the idea of autonomy of like, Melanie, you're in charge of putting together smart interview structures and like this. But as you say, I wouldn't have disagreed. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like a really smart because like Heather's story is terrifying, and these are not like one-offs. Like I've heard them from many founders who've, and like once you hire someone, you're then in this whole world of other challenge. So anyway, point is, thank you for informing me. Retroactively.
You know what? This podcast is just going to be our new one-on-one. This is where you learn all the things, all
They
the
say build in
things.
public. You can just have one-on-ones in
It's
public.
a very build in public, yeah.
It really
Mm.
is. But yeah, so we're working on a training to roll out to hiring managers because it just feels like it's a whole new world of recruiting
Totally.
with a whole new level of risks. Well, Heather, help us close this out. For anyone who's listening in and is now panicked, you've given some tips as to what to look out for. But is there anything else that companies should be doing to help mitigate this risk?
Yeah, I think creating really clear scope around what is the company's responsibility, what is the employee's responsibility, and helping everyone be enabled to be effective, just like you would with a regular security training. Like everybody knows to look at like the email alias and who's the sender of the thing when you ask for like a DocuSign to be signed or money to be sent over a text. Like this is the same concept. It's just expanded in the ways that it can show up in ways that it hasn't historically done. And so really empowering the team to learn. And then I would also say like empower the team to use AI, because the more savvy you are about what it's capable of yourself, not only will you become more efficient and effective in your own job, but you're going to be more likely to see it. Because if you don't know what it's capable of, you wouldn't even realize what kind of scandal you could become a part of. And so how do you help people do that? And I think there's cool things that are out there that people are doing. But one I would say that I've learned is like really open, free time to explore, show and tell, use things, as opposed to telling, well, this is how we're going to use it. Because when that's done that way, you don't see as high of adoption. So I could go into that that probably for like an hour. So I'll stop there.
Heather, thank you so much. It's been
Yeah,
amazing.
This is really good. Your story has made me like a little bit sweaty. I feel
Oh,
like whenever you hear
no.
this thing, no, it's a good one. It's just like, I think it was so good because it's so real. But no, I so enjoyed kind of talking about these like really interesting, spicy topics.
And this company never felt it, right? So like if you just stay on, but like also there's great candidates out in the world. So like you'll find them. But yes, no, I love talking with you both. I think you're both brilliant and I've loved everything I've heard in your past podcasts. So it's an honor to now be like a part of the content megasphere that is you both. So
The building in public.
I like it. Yeah.
I love it. Cool. Thank you. I've been waiting my whole life to say this. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn because that's the only social media platform where we hang out.